That interview that Dr. Phil did with Donald Trump a few days ago should be called an infomercial because they were selling bullshit. The question is, who's buying it? Let's talk about it. I'm Stephanie Rivers, and welcome to the video version of my journal. Let me turn down the audio on that. You might be watching on one of several platforms that we are multicasting on. We're multicasting on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. So, on whatever platform you're watching, we want to welcome you to the conversation. Now, there used to be a game show. It was called To Tell the Truth. And if you are at least 40, might have to be older to remember this show. It was one of my favorite game shows. Now, here's the premise of it. A panel of judges would be given they would get a description of a person. Then there would be three people who would pretend that they were the person that was being described. So two of the people were imposters. The third person was indeed the real person being talked about in the description. And at the end of the show, after each person had answered a few questions, because the judges would ask them, tell me more about what we said about you in the description. So the people, it was up to them to try to convince the panel of judges that they were indeed the person that was being talked about. So if you remember that show, To Tell the Truth, hit me up in the chat. But at any rate, at the end of the show, the panel of judges would say, will the real person please stand up? So one of the people would then stand up. Now, when I saw this interview that Dr. Phil did with Donald Trump a few days ago, Dr. Phil, who hosts his own syndicated talk show and apparently now is producing infomercials, like I said, he described Donald Trump as a man who is a devoted father, focused on his family, who doesn't care about what others think of him, but rather uses his wealth to enrich the lives of others around him. That's what Dr. Phil said about Donald Trump. So I'm looking around like, who the hell is he talking about? Because that clearly is not who Donald Trump is. And anybody who is like in the third grade probably could know that that's not who Donald Trump is. So as a matter of fact, that is so not who he is. That's why he got convicted of 34 felony counts of campaign finance fraud, because Donald Trump was so busy trying to control the narrative about what people think about him, because that's what consumes his every waking moment, how other people think of him. Anyway, it's an hour-long infomercial that you should see for yourself. You can just do a search for Dr. Phil interview with Donald Trump, I think it is. Anyway, we're going to go over some of those excerpts. Dr. Phil also said that he wanted during the interview or around the interview, he said he wanted for President Joe Biden to stop the prosecution of Donald Trump, and why it was in his best interest to do that. And I'm thinking again, one, never mind that the multiple jurisdictions that brought charges against Donald Trump came from across the country, because they came to their own evidence and their own conclusions about Trump's alleged crimes. Okay, so we can't forget that. Dr. Phil never challenged Donald Trump on anything during the whole hour infomercial, and he gave him another platform, basically, other than Fox News, for him to complain about his sorry situation that he created for himself. Now we're going to take a look at a few excerpts of it, and then hopefully that'll prompt you to go and see for yourself. Not that I'm not really into politics that much, but I do try to get people to just see different viewpoints, of not of their own. Maybe you might watch Fox News already. Maybe you might watch CNN, or you might watch another news station. But I always try to watch other people's information or their news to see what is it they're looking at, and two, just to see what other people are saying about what I care about. And so that's why I end up watching, and I ended up finding this interview. So let's take a look at some of the excerpts that we're just going to do three. We ain't going to do the whole thing, but I just want y'all to see this. And let me make sure that, this is on YouTube. And if you haven't already, be sure to like, share, and subscribe so that when I post new videos, you'll be the first to know. So let's look at this.
And I have a gag order from a local judge that was appointed by the Democrat Party. A local judge. He's a local person, and he is appointed. And he put a gag order on me. Nobody's ever seen anything like it.
While you're campaigning.
While I'm campaigning, like you just mentioned, a question that I'm not allowed to talk about.
Right.
Can you imagine? I'm the Republican nominee, and I'm not allowed to talk because a local judge from New York, appointed by Democrats, said I can't talk about it.
Now, let's just, the local judge, whoever the judge is, he put a gag. They're acting like the gag order is saying that Donald Trump can't go out and campaign and talk about campaign issues. That's not what the gag order is about. The gag order is to keep you from criticizing the judge and jurors and prosecutors and whoever else that you think is against you for doing their job. That's what the gag order is about. So for him to say, oh, the gag order, I'm under a gag order, that's because they're not letting him just run verbally over people and criticize people that have nothing to do with politics and don't have anything to do with running for president. So, and Dr. Phil never challenged him on anything. He never said, well, maybe if you quit talking about people and their kids and their wives and all of the above, maybe you wouldn't be under. He never said any of that. So that's one thing. Here's another one where they were accusing the Biden administration of trying to affect the presidential election. So we're going to, let me see. First, we're going to go to the one, another one. I'll just go to it instead of me talking about it. Let's see.
Good statement in the Wall Street Journal. I read that this morning. And it's so true. I mean, it's so accurate. They've weaponized to a level. They are trying to affect the election by demeaning, hurting in any form. And by the way, I think after the election, the hatred's great enough that they'll go, but with much less enthusiasm. This is about November 5th, which I think is going to be the most important day in the history of our country.
Now, if I hear one more person say that's going to be the most important election in the history of our country, that is like triggering for me, because everybody thinks every election is the most important one. Why? Because they want you to go vote. So it's like they want you to get all up in arms over why they think it's important, but they don't. After you after you participate in the election, nobody follows through on what they said they would. They don't. It's not. What's the word? Reciprocity is not practiced. If like with Joe Biden, and I'll just say this, who stood up after he was voted into office in 2020 and said, I want to thank the African Americans. If it wasn't for y'all, the Black people in South Carolina, y'all put me in office. And then that was the end of that. He never, I would think he would have done more to put policies in place for people who he said put him in office. Just makes sense. But no, he didn't do that. So that's just one of the things. And now you got Trump saying this is going to be the most important because he's trying to incite, he's trying to rev up his base so they will come out and forget all about all the criminal cases that he has against him. So everybody is trying to make it seem like it's it's your dire need for your life that you go and vote for them or you go and vote against another person. So do you guys think that Dr. Phil, and I know I'm just showing you one of the ones they talked about how the DOJ is being used to affect the 2024 election. Isn't that the same thing that Donald Trump is accused of doing? He's accused of trying to change the outcome of the 2020 election by pressuring the Secretary of State in Georgia to find more votes so that he could win Georgia. And when that didn't work, then he went out on January 6th and is accused of, and I think incited a riot of the insurrection. So it's like, I think the word is, what's the word? Deflecting? Is that the word? Deflection. Yeah. When you accuse other people of doing what you are guilty of doing, it just makes, he's the king of deflection in my opinion. There was another one in here. They were talking about let the people decide. Let the people decide instead of using the Department of Justice. First of all, the Department of Justice is that's why they exist, because they are the national arm of the state and local authorities. Okay. And so a jury did decide, a local jury did decide that Donald Trump was guilty of 34 counts. So it's like, what are we doing here? What are we selling here? Do you think that Dr. Phil is hurting his credibility? Did you ever like Dr. Phil or think he was a credible person as far as mental health, as far as being a therapist, as far as helping people through some issues that they're having, family issues? I thought he was a credible person until of late when he, a number of things, but most recently when it was in the news that a lot of us were talking about, a lot of news cities, they were talking about putting reparation bills in place locally and nationally. And then Dr. Phil had the nerve to say, well, I don't think that they should get reparations that ADOS, African descendants of slaves, should get, American descendants of slaves should get reparations because they don't know what to do with the money. They would lose the money. They would not do right by the money. It's like, who the are you to tell somebody else what they should and shouldn't do with their money, regardless if you agree or you don't agree? It's their money that's due to them. Feel like, shut the up. Okay. So anyway, yeah, when he said that, I'm like, who is this dude? It's kind of like some people have this like paternal, what's the term? Paternal aura about them, that where they think they know better than you how you should live your life. They know better than you how you should do whatever it is you're doing. He comes across as that type of person of late. And it's just, it's coming out. A lot of people are doing that. A lot of people are putting themselves in a position where they are trying to tell somebody else how to live their lives and what to do with their money and how to teach their children and all of this. And so that of late is how I'm thinking that Dr. Phil is now. Why he wanted to do this video with this infomercial with Donald Trump, I'm thinking he must be in line for a White House job, because he's doing a lot of brown nosing of late for for reasons that can't be explained except for something like that. Now, remember when people were talking about giving, there was well, I already went over that because I was trying to read it. Now, if you want to hear the whole interview, Trump of Trump, then of course you can go to YouTube. But if Dr. Phil wanted to do an interview with Donald Trump or to talk about some new things, I think it would have been a good idea to ask Donald Trump about the recent the producer of the Apprentice show. I don't know if you watched the Apprentice. A couple of it was on 20 years ago, where Donald Trump was calling himself hiring people to work in his organization, and then the catchphrase was "you're fired." And so this producer of the show was under a non-disclosure agreement, a 20-year-long non-disclosure agreement that apparently ended earlier this year, maybe. And so he's started to do interviews. And one of the things that this producer said in the articles that were printed, that were posted, was that Donald Trump used the N-word in front of a room full of white people, a room full of people, while cameras were rolling, so it was recorded. And during the planning of The Apprentice, and specifically saying, because when it came down to who was going to be chosen to win the apprenticeship at the Trump organization, it came down to two people, a white dude and a black dude. And apparently the producers, the co-producers of the show, were telling Donald Trump that, I don't remember the names, but the black dude seemed to be better suited for winning The Apprentice. And Donald Trump said something like, well, will America really buy that an N-word won over a white dude? That was kind of like the context of what Donald Trump was saying. And this is according to the producer. And he said cameras were rolling, so it was recorded. Now, whether they got rid of the recordings or not, he doesn't know. But he clearly, his own ears and eyes, he was in the room. Now, and so, yeah, I don't think anybody is surprised that Donald Trump used the N-word. I ain't surprised. I'm sure nobody else is. Just like we're not surprised that he was recorded saying grabbing women by the P word, and then later was charged and convicted of being a serial rapist, okay? Because that's just the type of dude he is. The surprise for me is that people who knew that the kind of person that Trump is and was before he got elected in 2016, they never bothered to publicly say anything. And still, some are sitting by letting things pop off because they don't see how it affects their lives directly. So, when people don't think that they're going to be affected, then they'll let the house burn down if they don't think their house is going to be affected. So that's the kind of people that we are dealing with. And that's why you can't trust people to care about you. You have to have all your stuff in order, and then maybe, just maybe, and that's not to say that nobody cares, but most people don't. And as long as it doesn't affect them, they're not going to say anything. And so, yeah, that is what is surprising to me, is that so many people would not come forward when they know right is right and wrong is wrong. But this reminds me of, I'm going to show you a video and I'm going to end it on that. This reminds me of the video that I'm going to show you. It reminds me of a comedian that was doing his set once. And the comedian was like, yeah, I'm single and I am looking for the woman in my life. And he said, the type of woman I'm looking for is like a Trump supporter. I don't give a damn what you tell her that I did wrong. She ain't gonna believe it. I don't tell if you tell her I was sending D pics. I don't care if you told her I was at the club with somebody else. I don't care if you tell her you saw me walking out the hotel room. I don't care what you tell her. She ain't gonna believe it. That's the type of woman I want. So when I saw this video of and I don't know if it was AI generated. I don't know, but it was just funny because it just explains all that is going on, all that Trump is facing, and still people are supporting him. So let me see if I can pull it up, and we'll go from there. Stand by.
You, Mr. President Trump, Your Majesty, I just want to say on your behalf that I'm a Republican and I believe you when you say that the election was stolen from you, and that I believe that you didn't commit tax fraud and that you didn't commit business fraud and that you didn't embezzle millions of dollars from your Trump Foundation charity or scam your university students out of millions of dollars. I believe that. And I believe that you didn't cheat on your wife with a porn star and a Playboy model, and that you didn't pay the porn star $130,000 to make sure she didn't tell anyone about it right before the 2016 election, and that you didn't sexually assault a woman in the dressing room of a department store, and that you didn't conspire to steal the 2020 election by creating false slates of electors, and that you were not complicit in the attempted hanging of your vice president, and that you did not commit child rape with Jeffrey Epstein, and you did not sexually harass over 25 women who came forward accusing you, and that you really didn't enter the Miss Teen USA changing room where girls as young as 15 years old were undressed. And I believe you. I just do. I don't believe that you stole classified documents, hid them in your bathroom, and obstructed attempts to get them back by the government. I don't believe it for one sec. And I believe you did not extort Ukraine to interfere in an election in 2020 and encourage Russia to help you win the 2016 election. I don't believe that. And I believe you did not actively undermine the nation's response to a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic and let a deadly disease spiral out of control for months. I don't believe it. And that you did not orchestrate a months-long coup attempt that culminated in a violent insurrection to disrupt the peaceful transfer of power and install yourself as an unelected dictator. And I don't believe that you spew deranged conspiracy theories about everything from climate change to immigration to vaccines to windmills. And I don't care that you were impeached twice or that you're a convicted criminal felon. I just don't. Now, I don't believe and I don't care that you're banned from doing business in the state of New York for 3 years. I will do business with you. I will move to New York just to do business with the Trump organization. Or I don't think that you should have to pay the $500 million in business fraud fines because you're innocent. And I don't believe that you took millions from foreign governments while you were president. So to top it all off, I believe President Trump when he says he's not a rapist, he's not a thief, he's not a grifter, a liar, a philanderer, a narcissist, a glutton, a bully, and a complete ignoramus. And I don't believe he cheats at golf. Thank you, Mr. President, for being a good Christian leader dedicated to truth and justice for all. By the
way, that was a lot, wasn't it? So if you still support Donald Trump, then you are this dude. You are saying, I don't believe none of that. I don't believe none of that. And I don't believe none of that because I just don't believe it. And it's hard to believe that you would be somebody who could ignore all of that and still support. But, I guess that's what having your own convictions, I guess that's what, different strokes for different folks. I don't know. I can't explain it. Anyway, I just want y'all to be willing to go and look at other, just be inquisitive, read, whether it's articles, whether it's listening to other things, whether it's looking at a different news station, just look at the alternative Not so that you can try to, persuade yourself, or I'm trying to persuade you in another way. I'm not. I just feel like if you have a different perspective, look at different perspectives on things, and that can help you to have a better understanding about and a better educated viewpoint on whatever it is you believe in. And that's important. And teach your children to be open to understanding other people's viewpoints. um yeah, because it just makes us stronger and more able to ascertain, to what's the word, to evaluate what is right and what is wrong, instead of just always going off of what other people say without having critical thinking skills. That's what I'm trying to say. To develop your critical thinking skills, you have to be willing to listen to people who don't think like you. And believe it or not, it will help you. So if you're ever in a situation where you have to say why you believe something or why you don't believe something, you won't just be rattling off what other people have said. You'll actually have your own point of view based on things that you've read and things that you have experienced, maybe. So that's really all I have for you today. To find out more about the things that I care about, you can go to the written version of my journal. And I will say this, there's what, 6 more shopping days until Father's Day, or Father's Day is next week. So if you have someone in your life who has helped you, and they've been a father figure to you, fathers are just as important, if not, they're just as important, let me say that, as mothers to a child. Okay. And so keep that in mind when you are going about your day next week. All right. Thanks. And